you just a moment here.
Hope everyone is having a great holiday season.
We are live.
Okay, great. Welcome to our live participants. My name is John L. Bell. I am the facilitator for the Community Oversight Advisory Committee. Just reviewing our participant review. Just a reminder that Zoom will be available for presenters and COAC members. The general public may view via YouTube live stream. Please raise your hand to speak. Please remain on mute until recognized. And for COAC, please keep your video camera on to the degree that you are comfortable as we continue to work through this virtual setting. For all others, please keep your video off unless you are speaking. If you have technical issues, you may text or call 503-479-8674. Next slide, please.
Give me a second. I'm admitting some of the folks that's coming in a little late. I'm sorry. There we go. Okay.
Great. And welcome all COAC members and participants. We're just going through the instructions. So another packed agenda today. Again, welcome everyone. We'll review the ground rules in just a second. We'll have a quick overview of our last meeting's minute notes. Then we'll receive project updates today from Monica Blanchard. We'll also receive updates from Erica and I believe as well as Dr. Hope. Then we'll receive a really exciting update on Odot's social equity efforts from Maria Ellis. Then we'll roll up our sleeves, again, having conversations relative to the Community Matrix Part 2, and really receive your ongoing recommendations relative to the diversity plan. We'll then have an opportunity for COAC breakout sessions, and then report out. We'll receive public comments, have next steps and conclusions. Next slide, please. Just a reminder of the meeting format and overview. General public attendees will be in listen mode. Today's meeting will be live streamed and recorded via YouTube and will be made public on Odot's project website at i5rosecquarter.org. After the breakout group session, the general public is invited to rejoin the meeting for the report back summary, work session, and public comment. Again, if you have technical issues, you may text or call 503-479-8674. Next slide, please. Due to technical limitations of our live streaming, members of the public are not able to listen to or view the breakout sessions in real time. However, at 5:30, COAC members will reconvene with the larger committee and report their summary from each breakout session. Recommendations from each breakout group will be presented and discussed publicly at that time. Recordings of the individual sessions will be posted online once available after the meeting. Next slide, please. Just a reminder of our ground rules or rules of the road. Of course, these are not new to our COAC, but for everyone else's edification. For us to let everyone participate by listening to and respecting diverse views and opinions. For us to listen with an open mind, to value learning from different input, for us to stay open to new ways of doing things. And let me just commend this committee for really leaning into that. As a result of your innovation and creativity, you've really helped to steer the diversity plan in the right direction. For us to treat others constructively and respectfully. Next slide, please. Respect the role of the facilitator to guide the group process. Again, my role is to be your neutral facilitator, to continue the dialogue and to help us get through our agenda. For us to attack the problem, not the person. Disagreement, frustrations, and differences of opinion are acknowledged, explored, and addressed. Next slide. So just want to see if we have any questions or comments. You received minutes from our last meeting, which was held on November 18th, and just want to hear if there were any comments or concerns relative to those notes. Okay, hearing or seeing none. Next slide. With that, I am going to turn it over to Monica for a project update.
Thanks, Jono. Good evening, COAC members. Megan is out on vacation today, so I'll be covering a couple updates this afternoon. First, I wanted to make everyone aware that our project website was taken offline after the site's host server was compromised about a week ago. So we do have an interim web page in place right now while our team works diligently on a permanent solution. If you do go to i5rosequarter.org, you will get redirected to the temporary site. As always, we want to make sure that you as a COAC, as well as all of our public, have access to the information that was on the project website, and we're able to answer any comments or questions. So if you do have any questions, please reach out to Janelle or anyone else on the project team, and we can help you out while we work through the website issue. We want to continue to keep you appraised of the letter of agreement being developed by the governor's office. That's currently with the City of Portland and partners for review. We're still tracking this closely, and we'll share any news when we hear it as soon as possible. Next, I know Megan mentioned last month at the COAC meeting was the same day as our Oregon Transportation Commission meeting, but well, the Federal Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act was signed on November 15th. We're still waiting on passage of the federal reconciliation bill, which is a key puzzle piece to our conceptual finance plan. So this is one of the funding sources, like I said, considered in the conceptual finance plan that we have worked hard to complete at the Oregon Transportation Commission's request by December 1st. So this plan includes refined cost estimates and the federal, state, and local funding sources that'll provide the financing need to cover the full cost of the project. But due to the shift in the timing at the federal level, at our last Oregon Transportation Commission meeting, they decided to delay the delivery of our conceptual finance plan out to January 13th in order to accommodate the timing of the reconciliation bill. So we are on track to meet this revised deadline, and then we'll be providing our update at the Commission's January 20th meeting. Just wanted to keep you in the loop as the finance plan is something we will be bringing back to the COAC as an informational item in early 2022. So more to come there. Also, due to this timing shift that I described around the reconciliation bill, we've also delayed our discussion about the letter to the federal delegation that Megan mentioned last month. That's really because we want to make sure we have the most up-to-date info at our disposal to best position us to advocate for those the funding that's necessary for community benefits that'll be provided by this project. So more to come in January, working on an initial draft for your consideration to bring to you in January on that. The last thing I'd like to provide an update on is some of the community outreach that we have planned for the this coming year. So this outreach is in addition to some of the outreach that the CMGC contractor will be leading as a part of the diversity and subcontracting plan. So some of these outreach includes monthly lunch and learns. This week we kicked off our first recurring series of lunch and learns, providing the opportunity for businesses and organizations to learn more about the project and our progress. We have several community briefings scheduled. We've been reaching out to a series of neighborhoods and other interest groups to provide presentations to their membership about the project and our work in forwarding community benefits. Some of these have been project specific, and some are more broadly about the suite of projects that we're doing as a part of the urban mobility strategy. Also, last month we held a roundtable for community-based organizations, and we are currently working on gearing up for our CBO outreach program through the equitable engagement compensation policies so that we can engage in the work in a really intentional way. We've also been pursuing sponsorship opportunities, supporting arts and culture and community, most recently sponsored the 2021 MLK Dream Run, and we're looking ahead to other opportunities in 2022. And we've also been out in the community tabling at events, most recently for Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. And we plan to continue this work and other virtual and in-person festivals and community events throughout the year. And then lastly, we've been presenting and advocating for the benefits of the project to the local and state elected officials in a broad series of project-specific and, again, urban mobility strategy-focused briefings. We plan to continue this work through next year, particularly as new information is available on major project milestones. And if you're interested in more specifics about upcoming engagement, I'm happy to connect you with Tia Williams or Rose Gerber, who are both a part of our communications team. So that's my updates for today. Jonelle, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, I would like to invite any questions from COAC. Mr. Polsey?
Yeah, can you hear me okay? John, everybody hear me okay?
Coming out loudly and clearly.
Okay, good. Well, you know, Monica, I was hoping that Megan would be at this meeting. I know you do an excellent job of filling in for her. But at the end of the day, maybe it's just me, I'm feeling very uncomfortable. I'm just going to be straight up with you about it. I feel like we're on the 15-yard line where we're headed toward the goal, but we ain't there yet. And the team doesn't appear to be aggressive enough in terms of getting the ball across the line. This IGA, we've been fumbling with that thing for the last umpteen months, and the report that you just gave was not definitive about when, what, where, or how that thing is going to fall in line. And I'm really concerned. I'm concerned because I've seen this movie before where we get right up to where we're going to achieve something and we drop the ball. We let our guards down. I'm concerned. And let me just tell you what a part of my concern is AVT. I think it's about time for us to bring AVT into one of these meetings and have discussions with them about collaborating and getting this stuff together, bringing the city to the table. And I don't see you guys doing that. I don't know, maybe that's something the COAC needs to do on its own, directly to AVT and all the other haters out here. I don't want to call them haters, but you know, they've been thwarting this program for such a long time. I think it's time for us to take the temperature where those folk are and see if we can all come together and move this ball across the finish line. That's kind of how I feel about it. Let me give you an example about this. There's going to be a special session in a week or so. Do we have any team members out talking to the legislators about this project and their need to support it? And you know, all them people up in Salem, they have influence on these city people. And if we're not talking to them about getting this ball across the line, it's not going to happen. Monica, are you hearing me? I don't know if anybody else is hearing me. I'm just not feeling comfortable.
James, let her respond.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I hear you, James. I know we do. Our government relations team is actively engaging in briefings with the legislators, so I can assure you there. I hear you on the time that it's taking to get the governor's agreement in place. I know Megan and Brendan and others are following that. Unfortunately, it's out of our hands. And so I will follow up with them and see what else we can do. I hear you.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that you will use us as a COAC to help push this ball. We need to get the other committee involved also, because you know, you guys are trying to do this, but at the end of the day, that's what the community advisory groups are supposed to be about. We're supposed to be helping you all push this through the political process, and I don't see it happening. You know, I don't see no direction. I don't see a letter or strategy whereby we can get in in the marriage space, or Hardesty space, Ryan, Willer and Hardesty aren't the only ones. We got Ryan and we got Rubio. We got other commissioners that we haven't, it's crickets coming out of them. You understand what I'm talking about, Megan? So it's time for us to get real and get on down to the nitty gritty and move this ball across the line.
Great, appreciate your comments. Any other questions or comments from folks relative to the report for Monica? Seeing no other questions or comments, let's move on to committee reports. Ms. Erica Warren.
Good afternoon, COAC. I'll be sharing for Dr. Holton, myself today, and Tri-Excellence. We had a great HAB meeting this week as well on Tuesday. The HAB received the same project updates, and I will tell you, Mr. Posey, that there are the same questions and calls to accountability from the Historic Albina Advisory Board as well, and the timing of this intergovernmental agreement and making sure that we are having those conversations to bring partners back to the table. After that discussion, we had a great presentation from Jeff and Bill in regards to the good work that you all are doing with the CMGC in regards to the diversity plan. So I just want to appreciate you all for your work. The Historic Albina Advisory Board is very, very interested. It was in how our community is going to benefit. So all of the work that you all are putting in is of great value to us. We want to appreciate you for your investment there. Received many conversations afterwards. There's always a meeting after the meeting, but just looking at the great work that you all are doing, it was very important to them to hear the actual numbers, to be able to see what kind of financial investment could be made in this community after we get this ball across the finish line. So want to just, again, extend our appreciation. The HAB is still appreciative of your updates. And I would agree, we always wanted, and that's why I appreciate, Janelle and Amber and the team here giving us an opportunity to speak with you all, to work with you all, to make sure that both community groups are working collaboratively together to make sure that there's maximum benefit for the Black community. We also received a really exciting update from the urban design team. We have a small committee of HAB members who are meeting a little more frequently with the urban design team to talk about the potential for what could be included in some of the infrastructure design, exciting conversations around how we can really represent the history of Albina. So when folks are, seeing the walls during travel on the freeway side, as well as on the community side, the undersides underneath the proposed cover, as well as new pillars and construction and where the community could have input there. So those conversations are going really well. The urban design team is excited and pushing the envelope, and we're going to need partners for that effort as well. And so making sure that we're tapping into all of the other resources in the community to make sure that we're represented in the design in that infrastructure piece. And lastly, really exciting possibility and conversations that we have been having. One of the HAB members, Srinivasa Brown, is co-founder of Camp Elso, and they curate experiences for teens and youth, Black and Brown youth in the community, to be involved in social justice, in urban design. They have a couple of programs that we are hoping to utilize as a catalyst, to utilize as a facilitator to increase youth engagement on this project so that there is opportunities for Black and Brown kids to participate with the design team in some of those urban forums, to give their input in areas where this project is going to affect them and their future. So those are some exciting collaborations. We having conversations, I know, with Dina at iUrban Teen. I know that there's a relationship, I believe, with Ray Moore and POIC and some of those other groups. So we're really excited about the youth voice on this project. And so we'll be sure to continue to leverage you all, your expertise, your network, your relationships to help us move the project forward. So thank you for letting me share today.
Great. Thank you, Erica, for that update. Any questions for Erica? Seeing, oh, let's see, Jen Spolsey. And if we can make it brief and brilliant, that would be awesome.
No, that ain't gonna work. You know, I ain't never brief, but I'll try my best. Hey, Erica, listen, I'm trying to understand. And
Yes, sir.
I hope you all don't take it personal, but is there any effort afoot to educate those folk who are running for the governor's office about this project and what their take is, and whether or not we can get a response from them in terms of what they would do if they were in office when this project goes on? You know, I mean, those folk influence what happens in the city, and we have to connect these dots, Erica.
Yes, sir.
You know, and I'm not sure it's appropriate for the COAC to do that, but at some point we have to connect these dots and make sure everybody who could impact this project and move it forward is aware of our community involvement. Are you guys doing that, or should we as a COAC do that? You tell me.
I don't know that we've spoken about that as far as candidates, because knowing we're going to have a new governor coming in shortly. But I know that working with the CMGC and Odot leadership, I-5 Rose Quarter project leadership, there is a strategy to make sure that we're connecting all of those folks. And so Dr. Holt is really involved with that. We're making sure that where there are gaps, we're helping to fill those. And so I think, you know, HAB members such as Kevin Modica, Mr. Edwards, all of them have made themselves available, and the team to talk about who we need to influence, who those conversations need to be. I know that TIA and the Urban Mobility Office are reaching out to HAB members to ask them where we should engage in the community as well. So we're in line with you, Mr. Posey, and I think you're right. The community does need to speak and make sure that we're sharing with all those people who are in government and leadership how this project can be beneficial and positively affect our community.
So what would make me feel better, Erica?
Yes, sir.
If we had some stuff in writing.
Yes, sir.
Correspondence with those folk and whoever else we need. The Department of Justice, this diversity plan is going to the Department of Justice. We have political influence with the Department of Justice. You know, them folk are going to take a strict construction rule on how they interpret what we put out here. We need to get out in front of them and make sure they know that there's some expectations on this community that they do things differently. I need to see that in writing.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll make sure to take that back. I think that's positive feedback for us. I know that Dr. Holt was wanting to chime in here as well.
Dr. Holt, do you want to chime in?
Only to support what you just said, Mr. Posey. We're very much involved in the strategic steps to get clarity around Alliance. We understand the importance of it, and we understand it's going to take quite a bit of work beyond just what each committee is doing individually. So thanks, Erica. Great feedback and response.
Thank you both. I want to keep us moving forward. Our next presentation, we will have, we'd love to welcome Maria Ellis of the Office of Social Equity and David Kim of the Office of Statewide Project Delivery to discuss some ongoing efforts that's happening at Odot relative to equity at the agency. So with that, I will turn it over to Maria and David.
Hey everyone, my name is Maria Ellis. I am the Economic Equity Manager here at Odot. I want to start out by saying thank you so much for having David and I today. We really appreciate the service that you are providing and being involved with this really important project that is changing the way that Odot does business. I understand that you want to learn a little bit more about how what our Office of Social Equity is doing. And so I want to start out with a little bit of history. The office is very new. It came in as part of an organizational redesign that our current director stood up. The first assistant director of that division is Nakatris Perkins, who many of you know. and she started in March 2020. I say all this because I want to put a fine point on how new this office is, and how we are really starting this. We started this work from scratch. And it's a big task when you're thinking about a 5,000 person agency that is a bureaucracy in every sense. In terms of the Office of Civil Rights, which administers a lot of our federal programs related to DBE and workforce, that office got folded into the Office of Social Equity. But the Office of Social Equity created additional buckets of work to advance social equity on a much broader scale outside of, within the agency and outside of the realm of Office of Civil Rights. So this is a new team. We have around, if you're not counting the Office of Civil Rights, we've got 4 people. The 4th one just started a week and a half ago. And all of us have been here less than a year. So it's a very new team. The goal of the office is to help achieve this vision that you see here on the board, these multicolor panels. This is a vision since we're starting from scratch, we had to really think about what does social equity mean for ODOT and where do we want to be? And this spectrum here reflects where we want to be in 2030. I'm just going to be very honest and say that we're not even remotely close there on most of these, because we're really talking about big tasks related to cultural shifts, which is the first starting point of some of the changes that we want to see. So what that looks like for us currently, and some of this admittedly is just flat out just much slower than we know that our partners want us to work. It's much slower than we would like to see it work. So we acknowledge as ODOT that we're not remotely where we want to be. The kinds of things that we're still working through are a lot of, again, change management. And what that looks like is things like interrupting bias in the workplace, pivoting longstanding institutional patterns of how our practices that maybe, or for sure disadvantaged, perpetuating inequalities. We're trying to inform our resource allocations about how and where we put our investments, not just in terms of dollars for the work such as workforce, but things like in actual projects. Where are we putting our projects? We're shifting we're still trying to also make the value proposition in some ways, which is, again, kind of reflective of the ground level place that we're at in this journey. Those have worked in this space, that it's hard and slow work. And some of the ways in terms of the change management that we're trying to do within the agency, some of that is addressing things like that social equity, the value proposition. Some folks see it as an either or thinking, that it's a zero-sum game. And we're trying to educate folks that no, focusing and centering social equity actually is a way to achieve multiple outcomes. Yes, sometimes the work is slower, and that is a good thing. We're addressing things like power and hoarding within the agency, fear of conflict, and also providing the right for people to confront bias when they see it and inequalities when they see it, both within the agency and in the work that we are delivering. We're also battling some things internally like equity washing, when we are using equity to help things move along that are actually perpetuating inequities. So I wanted to start on that very Debbie Downer, unfortunately, tone, because I wanted to set some context about the reality of where we're at as an agency in this journey. With that said, that doesn't mean that we're not making headway, because there actually is a lot of things in motion. If you can go to the next slide. Now, again, starting from a very basic place, this is a tool, this is our equity lens. This is a simple tool that we're trying to implement within the agency to help us frame all of our decisions from large to small through the lens of social equity. This is a very different way of thinking for us that is requiring us to recenter our focus and really and looking at our decisions through how are we helping communities that have been previously disadvantaged and continuing to be marginalized in this moment. And that's everything. We're going to actually talk about this third bullet here on the social equity index a little bit further. David Kim, my colleague, is going to dive a little bit deeper into that. But this equity lens has tools attached to it that we are using to try to really track whether we are doing these things. These can't just be words on paper. We really have to be able to have performance measures attached to these goals here, or to how we're measuring these questions. Next slide. So in terms of, the equity lens is how we're trying to view all of our decisions, but that's some of the things that we're working specifically on to help BIPOC and women-owned firms and DBOs and workforce are related to our disparity study that we're working on, that will inform how we assess capacity for projects. We're trying to do some of this work through the BIPOC contract expansion work that we're doing, which is a body of work really trying to reflect internally about the policies, the procedures, the rules, the ways that Odot specifically creates barriers for BIPOC and women-owned firms to do business with us. We have to just start from the place of understanding that we do that, whether we intend it or not. That is something that we do. So that work is underway. We've got the social equity map, index map that David's going to talk about. We've got a new program, Equitable Engagement Compensation Program, to be able to compensate folks, volunteers who are spending time with us in advising us as Odot in our decision making, being able to compensate them from their time. We're trying to, and really we're also trying to assess whether the things that we do have are really working that well. And that includes things like mentor protege program and some of our technical assistance. We know that there's always room for improvement in all of our work. And we're looking at contractual strategies to support expansion of the workforce and also the race and gender makeup of that workforce. Next slide. And so that brings us to our strategic plan. We could have, we can say that we're doing good work, but how are we holding ourselves accountable? We've put this, what you're seeing here is a strategy, is related to our strategic action plan, which is more dollars to BIPOC and women-owned firms. That's an overarching goal within our strategic action plan. And we report to the OTC regularly on how we're progressing towards that. This is a new goal for the agency, but in 2022, this involves delivering on all of this, which is an implementation plan for how we're removing the barriers that we've identified this year in terms of contracting barriers for BIPOC and women-owned firms. Developing a more robust and formalized and funded partnership strategy to help facilitate engagement and training opportunities with trade associations and BIPOC firms. Again, we are asking a lot of some of our partners. We've been told that we're asking a lot of them and that it feels very one-sided, and it is. And we are acknowledging that. So part of that strategy is to be able to figure out some funding that we could use to have formal kind of engagements with some of our trade associations that are helping us out quite a lot so that they feel the benefit of working with us as well. We're trying to expand some of the trainings and to really understand, again, the efficacy of those trainings, where we need to improve our data collection, both to understand better how, when DBE firms are bidding, whether they're getting awarded and why aren't they getting awarded, how can we improve that? And then lastly, we want to do something around a customer satisfaction survey with DBE so that we can have better communication about what we could be doing better in the process of helping firms do contracting with us. That was a lot. I'm sorry to be speaking at you so much. I did see some things in the chat. I don't know if you want me to respond to them now, or do you want to wait until after David completes this portion?
Yeah, why don't we take a moment? That's if we could take the slides down just for a second and have folks offer any questions and comments. If you could raise your hand, I will call on you. If you've mentioned something in the chat box for everyone's edification, if you could just state it publicly, that would be great. And so, Joe, maybe we can have you kick off.
Yeah, thanks, Janelle. I was thinking as I was hearing you talk about, well, first of all, and this isn't direct, this is sticking, my comments are, I hope are in line with the guidelines of our meeting decorum here and expectations. So I'm going to get at my comments about the whole system, not you personally as a presenter here. So, but when I heard you present, I heard you spend a lot of time on how new the office is and how hard it's going to be. And I would like to recommend that we look at this like with a sense of urgency. Yes. So when you talk about, it's so easy to discriminate against women and people of color. I mean, it's in the fabric of everything in this country. And I'm suggesting that we not try to train up the companies and the contractors. What I'm recommending is that you just change your process and just change the I mean, what you started to describe, a lot of us have heard, and you've heard yourself. I mean, I get it. And I just think we should take a different approach. Let's take ODOT has expressed how, it's been a travesty. And I mean, I've heard it so much. I mean, it's just a broken record. So why don't we do something now? Let's do something bold. Let's just change the process. We don't have to, why does the bureaucracy have to be the problem? I mean, it seems like bureaucracy is always a problem when we're trying to help Black people. It's a problem. The system is it's so hard. I mean, just change it. I mean, that would be my feedback. We don't have time for all of these studies and all these evaluations and all this training and all that. Let's just be bold. I'd love to have that discussion. I can get excited. What you're laying out, not make sure you're doing your job. I mean, it's not about you, but I'm not interested. I ain't got time for all that. I'm ready to move now. I mean, how do we get contracts to people of color in the BIPOC community now? I mean, so I'm interested in changing the system now, doing something different now, and I'm not real interested in putting the onus on the contractors. So that's kind of my feedback.
Thank you, Joe. Maria, would you like to respond?
I agree. I mean, I agree. I think folks have been waiting a long time on ODOT to change, and we haven't changed. That's just the fact. And we do have to change the process. It is a lot messier than I think any of us anticipated it would be. Anybody who's been doing this work. And when we think about, the fact that ODOT even created, it shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be something like, oh, that's great. We shouldn't be patting ourselves on the back that we have a goal around BIPOC contract expansion. But that is sadly more progress than we have made before. And so we're working hard towards shifting some of those processes, shifting some of our policies and procedures, all of the things that we have, and we acknowledge that we are creating barriers ourselves. We can talk about all the environmental barriers are out there, but in reality, we also have a lot of barriers that we create as an agency for people to do business, to be able to do some of that wealth generation that this group has talked about, and specifically the Rose Quarter project is trying to address for some parts. And in terms of training, the only thing I would say is I think I might have mischaracterized the training piece. The training is is not to train, it is to change our processes and make them and help. It's for technical assistance to be able to provide firms more supports in the process of bidding and working with ODOT. So it's to help build up DBEs.
James Posey.
Yeah, I want to echo Joe's comments real quickly. I want to echo that because we really don't have time for, the fact that Ms. Perkins is leaving, and I know she put together the framework for what you presented here tonight, and she's gone. So the best laid plans is no good without someone who can implement them. People in your office have the mindset to be willing to implement what we're trying to do. Let me give you a quick example. That's certification. We go back several decades. This certification process has been touted and it's cumbersome. You guys got to do something better than that. And listen, let me just explain to you that on the 217 project, which you guys, I don't know whether that's bidded or not, but that's a prototype of how well you guys are going to function in the future that leads up to our I-5 project. Whether or not you all are expediting certification, whether you're implementing phases of what you guys are presenting tonight, how well that does, it's a prototype. So again, we've heard this before. This is not new news. And then the final thing I want to say is you guys need to align yourself with Miko, who is the procurement guy for the city of Portland, who has similar types of presentation arts on this on this call. So he knows we were in a meeting this morning with the city of Portland, who has similar sort of goals and expectations. Y'all got to align yourself. Do you talk to them at all, Maria? Do y'all talk to the city of Portland at all about your program and how y'all going to implement things together? Or are you all operating in silos?
I will just be honest, we do operate in silos. Yes, we do. As far as, my small piece of the pie on social equity, which is the BIPOC contract expansion work and more dollars to BIPOC firms, we are working with the city of Portland and in fact, BICO particularly on one piece of that, which is figuring out how to do contracting in a way that would allow more workforce development and while protecting DBEs in that process and making sure that they can come up in these contracts. But aside from that, I will just be honest, I don't know the full level. And I think, yes, we did need more collaboration on that front.
Reverend Hennessy. And then Art.
Thank you, Janelle, and to the group. It's always good to be here. And Maria, great job. And if what I'm about to ask, dovetails into the next person's presentation, I got it. I think that Mr. McFerrin spoke for all of us. Here are the thoughts that I would just offer from a standpoint of what I hope will be at least taken, listened to, and potentially done something about. Number one, we know that whatever underpins this plan, ODOT has a severe trust issue. And that trust issue is not going to go away by a wonderful presentation made by you today. However, what I believe is, and it may be a part of the plan, and if it's not part of the plan, I'm going to suggest that somebody ought to think about it, and that is, number one, who's being held accountable? Too oftentimes, the leader of the organization is held accountable, but there are so many different layers as you talk about how big ODOT is. The question is, are there area managers, directors, all this stuff, are they being held accountable? Because at the end of the day, what makes this stuff so hard, as Joe has asked in the beginning, is that everybody's not bought in. And you've got people in organizations who are in leadership who basically have the Weeby syndrome. We'd be here before you got here, we'd be here after you're gone, to the person who's at the top of the organization. If this isn't going down into the organization and people aren't being held accountable through the organization, then we've got severe problems, right? The other thing I would offer, and again, we're just seeing this tonight, you may have already thought about this. If your office is the doer, is your office, so your office is the presenter, the doer, the implementer and the monitor. And in my opinion, it's extremely important from an accountability standpoint that some serious thought be given to a separate independent monitor. And I've mentioned this to Chris before, Mr. Strickler before, because of the trust issue. If that's the underpinner, the truth is there can be beautiful reports coming out of your office, but the fact of the matter is they may not be believed because there's a feeling of dressing up stuff. When the reality is, if I were in your shoes, I would say, yes, let's have a separate independent monitor who's not paid by Odot, who, by the way, is here to make sure that the work is being done, the goals are being achieved, and the reports are being made, and both for good and things that aren't going so well. But I think that that's really important. Those are my thoughts, and thank you, John L. And if that sounded like a sermon, I'm ready to pass the plate.
Thank you, Reverend. Maria?
I would say again, Reverend, having not met you before, I would say please continue to preach, because that is in fact where we need to go.
Yeah.
I agree. It's not a third party, but the only mechanism we have right now to hold ourselves accountable is to report to the OTC. So that's the mechanism we're doing right now. It's not the best mechanism. It is not perfect, and we need to. But I like the idea of being able to have a third party kind of observation of where we're at to really reality check us and to not just come up with pretty reports. On the piece on the trust issue and how we're being held accountable, that is 100%. That this needs and should be part of our staff evaluations across the board. How are we operationalizing this work and how are we using that lens that we showed earlier in this presentation in all of our decision making? Also, still a long way from being there, but that is the goal. We should all be held accountable to those standards.
Art, and then Kenichi.
Please continue to hold us accountable. Please continue to say those things to us, because we need to continually hear them and to keep prodding us towards this goal. Also, it's not the staff internally that we have. There's a great group of folks that is trying to do this work, and we lean on that prodding to continue. We lean on like, hey, our community partners are asking us to do this, so we support this prodding.
We'll have Art and then Kenichi.
Thank you, John L. Reverend Hennessy, thank you for your comments. And James, thank you for stepping up to the plate all the time. I listen to your history, man, and I'm with you right there all the time. And I got to tell you that some of us are generational. Like, I'm a second generation radical. My dad was out there pushing hard when, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and I grabbed the baton and went with it as well. And today we have the Virginia Garcia Clinic and the Centro Cultural and all of these things that stemmed off of, Martin Luther King and also Cesar Chavez when he was doing his farm work. So I want to tell you from my life experience living in the front seat of watching everything happen in front of me, is that we deal with things where people put colors in front of us and we start trying to think of, is that a real thing? And this is James Posey every day pushing hard. But, when we go work on our stuff at home, or we go do something and somebody puts a rejection, something in our inboxes or what have you, this is what we're talking about right here. And also looking at all of the documents, we always get these videos of things, or we'll get tutorials. We have all these little shiny bells going on, but where's the truth behind the matter? And frankly, I'm 51 years old and I got 2 kids that are going to have to try and pick up where I'm leaving off and hopefully do a better job than I do. But at the end of the day, we don't want any more of this, hey, we think, or what we're trying to do. Well, we want to see what, like, BICO was has only been a CPO of Portland. In 90 days, he's created such an understanding that's unbelievable. And he was presenting that today with an action plan. And you know what? As much time as we've been in this meeting already, how long have we been here, Amber? I mean, it's been a long 2 years. And we still haven't got to what Beco presented today and fair contracting. Am I right, James?
I would agree.
So if we have some tenacity, let's make it happen. Let's show what we can do, because this is getting old. It's really getting old. Maria, I'm sorry that you have to be the receiver of that now, but I want to see something happen now. I'm tired of watching this, and I could be over here drawing something so I can go build something else. But this is more important, because I think I got to stand here with my brothers and fight hard. Right now, we need to get the work done. Let's quit talking about it.
Thank you for that. Maria, would you like to comment? Okay. I think that's 100% agreement. Kenichi, we'll have you go.
Thank you, Maria, for your comments. I thought they were really nicely done. I have a couple comments around the work that Odot is doing with the CBA document. Reverend Hennessy mentioned accountability, and I asked a question last meeting that I'd like to ask again. How will that work affect this particular project? What if Odot, and parts of what has been said earlier is really kind of resonating and sitting with me around Odot has gatekeepers. There are the real economics of business owners and folks within the agency that stand to make and keep a lot of money by not having equity truly reflected in its projects. I think the work that we're seeing through the various presentations that are happening in the CBA conversation reflects that. When you're talking about equity, you're talking about power. And when you're talking about power, you're talking about money. So let's talk a little bit about money. When we are saying that Odot wants to be held accountable through a tool, it's currently exploring and has in law that the CBA is one of the tools that it needs to use. How are we going to ensure, to borrow Art's words, that we don't see a lot of pretty pictures and kind of have reports that look like they're building equity, but then need to have this work be carried on by a third generation of people?
Maria?
So I heard one comment specifically about how the CBA relates to the Rose Quarter project. So I'll start there, which is Odot is creating a CBA/CWA, likely a CWA framework to respond to SB 420, as you know. The goal, it's a master framework. It's a master framework that will apply to projects of a certain size. I will say that is something that we would put into spec and prior to a project bidding. So I think the reality is that the Rose Quarter project is already achieving and working and doing a lot of the things that we would want to see achieved in a CWA. Odot Rose Quarter is already implementing those programs, those strategies through its CMGC. So in a way, we are all watching this project because we know those are the outcomes that we're trying to replicate through that CWA work, but in other areas.
That's great. I think one of the tools that we see through that standardized vehicle are the reporting. And so whether it's Jonelle or Amber, I think as part of the COAC, we're going to be really looking to come together in these meetings and have the same level of reporting that we would see if it were a CBA project. Because I do, Mariah, you're right. Like with this project, there are things that very closely resemble a CBA or CWA. So as part of the reporting, the COAC should be holding this project and all the project managers accountable with the same kind of standard that we would if it had a CBA.
And just real quickly, for folks who may not know what those terms mean, CWA is a community workforce agreement and a CBA is a community benefits agreement.
So the other comment that I had that was in there was really around some of the things that were highlighted around the work of supporting the business owners and helping business owners of color create wealth through Odot projects. And even though we're in COAC, I'll pivot a little bit, Mariah, because I think you're the person to ask this question. When the regional, and I think my personal philosophy in government providing assistance is government sometimes is the problem, and I'm not very excited about having to go to a government agency to get the assistance that I need that was caused by the government in the first place. So not kind of my my favorite solution. I'm curious about how part of the BIPOC contract expansion work that you're going to do will feed into solutions-based kind of assistance for the BIPOC contractors through the work, and if you've touched on that part.
We are in our second phase of this work. Some of you participated in that first phase. Kenichi, thank you for your inputs on identifying the barriers. We're in the second phase, which is identifying the solutions to those barriers. And then there'll be a third phase, which is Odot. This is specifically how you will address these barriers, the timeline, who's responsible. That's the implementation plan. So we are in the second, like I said, in the second phase. So we haven't, our full recommendations are not fully out yet, but we do see things like low-hanging fruit, things like bonding programs to make it, to remove some of the hurdles that smaller firms have on the bonding side when contracting. So there are, where all that to say is like, there's a lot, some of it is money related, some of it is not money related, some of it is just figuring out where we are failing, how we could support other partners that are doing this work already, because maybe to your point, Odot isn't the right vehicle. So how do we create better partnerships for those partners to deliver the services that they need because they might be closer to the firms? So some of it is administrative, some of it is technical assistance, some of it is just funding.
Great.
Does that answer your question?
It did, and I would add access to work opportunities, but yes. Absolutely.
Okay, Maria, why don't we continue your presentation, and just for folks who may be wondering, oh, are we going to get to the rest of the material? I'm not going to rush this. I think this presentation and all of your questions are very critical, and so we may need to postpone some of the other material for next month. So we're going to continue this dialogue. So Maria, if you want to continue your presentation.
Sure. Well, David is next, but I also, Amber, sorry to put you on the spot too, but Amber Ontiveros and Associates has been really helpful in the work that we just mentioned, that BIPOC contract expansion work. So I don't know if you want to share anything too, Amber.
Sure. So Kenichi and some of the other folks. So in the preliminary work that we did, in the first phase, we did a barriers analysis of Odot, and we found, I mean, just like a 2-second recap is, we found a variety of barriers, like so many different barriers, everything from a lack of strategy or around, say, for example, technical assistance and not a unified approach to and strategy around outreach to there are other contractual mechanisms that Odot can utilize. For example, CMGC, there's also other contractual mechanisms that Odot can utilize to expand opportunities for DBEs. Other things included looking at different methodologies for calculating availability in the disparity study approach. And in terms of the solutions, we haven't presented the solutions, but it's a variety of things. Everything from like the things that Maria talked about, a formal bonding program to technical assistance to internal improvement process for quick pay. That's different than prompt pay. In other words, there are systems right now that they can remove the way they currently do it, and so that they can pay contractors quickly. They can do that quickly. And that's an internal thing that doesn't cost any money. It just requires them to think differently about the way they deploy the work. So those are just some of the things. The other thing is increasing money for building the workforce pipeline. So those are just some of the highlights. And also David Kim, who's going to talk here in a minute, we strongly encourage developing a prime contractor development program and or some kind of program that allows an alternative delivery mechanism, right? We reviewed the state law and the federal law, and they can do something like this. So it requires that they think about it in a different way. And, Bill knows how to do this. So anyways, those are just some of the things.
Sorry to put you on a spot like that. I put the report in case anyone is interested in the chat, and also the link to the 2-page summary.
Great, thank you, Maria. David, why don't we have you kick off?
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, COAC members. Great to see some old friends here. I'm David Kim, the statewide project delivery manager for Odot. And my role within Odot is a fairly new role to strengthen project delivery, to establish standards of practice, and to be a resource for the agency. And my position was created after the passage of House Bill 2017, that $5.3 billion transportation funding package. I've been with Odot for the last 17 years, with the first 14 being in Region 1. And so I have just a few slides that will provide a high-level overview of some of the work underway for how we are integrating and implementing equity into our projects, specifically DBE and workforce development. But before I begin, I just want to say a few things. I have to give some kudos to Director Strickler for his commitment to equity by creating an Office of Social Equity and providing resources. And during the time that I've been at Odot, it's the people and the resources that make things happen. Absent that, nothing will happen. And there is a paradigm shift that's happening within Odot. When Nikatris led the Office of Social Equity, everybody looked to her to say, what do we do? What do we do? And it's not that everybody needs to look to her, it's everybody needs to own equity. And so when she announced she was leaving, there was a lot of panic. And the conversation was, she set up a framework, we all own it. And what does equity mean to us? So it really starts with the workforce within Odot to understand it and recognize it and do something about it, recognizing how it applies to the work we do each and every day. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to take place to get employees that have been around for 30 years and the new employees to understand how equity applies to each of the things we do each and every day. We've also made, and by making equity a core value of the agency, and we're making it so that it guides our decision-making and behaviors, whether it be the people, the process, the policies, the programs, and projects. And I have a lot of engineers that are struggling with how does equity apply to my engineering. I have project managers that are struggling. How does equity apply to project management and to construction? And it applies, and we're having robust conversations with my managers and their staff about how equity applies to the work that they do each and every day. So with that little bit of background, what you see in front of you is a snapshot of the current Odot project delivery portfolio, right? It's the body of work of Odot when it comes to transportation projects. So at 1 o'clock on this racetrack is where we start scoping projects. And then my world ends at about 10 o'clock where we close out construction. So we currently have about 368 projects in our 21-24 statewide transportation improvement program, also called the STIP. And that would also include the Rose Quarter and I-205 projects. Of the 368 projects, we have 242 projects that are active in design. And then 74 of those projects are going to be going to bid in the next 12 months. And then right now we have 38 active projects in construction. I would say the overall portfolio of these projects exceeds $2 billion. We average about a little over $500 million a year in construction projects. So in addition to my work in supporting design and construction in the regions, we're looking at how we can implement policies and programs to standardize emerging practices and initiatives, such as what Maria referenced earlier, the strategic action plan and the equity lens into this racetrack. Next slide. So some of the major aspects of the work we do related to DBE and workforce is goals. We have a disparity study which sets that statewide goal for projects, and today we're at 15.37% as the goal. And so what we do is we work with each of the project teams across the 5 regions. We evaluate the type, size, and location of these projects to assign those hard goals. And then those goals get established into our construction contracts, where our construction offices work with the Office of Civil Rights to ensure the prime contractors are meeting those goals. And for the Rose Quarter project, my understanding, the initial range of the DB goal is between 18 and 22%. And I would expect that that's going to get finalized once the scope gets completed. And then ultimately we'll be working with the CMGC team to develop those work packages and assign specific goals to each of those work packages. That's just a quick overview of DBE. On the OJT front, or the apprenticeship front, we have an apprenticeship incentive disincentive provision in some of our construction contracts that encourage contractors to use apprenticeships on our projects. And this is on a reimbursement basis. And we are seeing most contractors participate to the maximum, which is 150%. And we're typically seeing 300 to 500 hours on our projects. And these are more of the smaller projects in the, say, $2 to $10 million range. My understanding for the Rose Quarter project is the OJT apprenticeship hours are in the realm of about 1.4 million hours. And then the equity lens for project delivery. As Maria referenced earlier, those 5 questions, we are requiring those questions on each of our projects moving forward. And we're evaluating our project delivery processes to see how we can apply equity, whether it be community engagement, contracting. The shift in our thinking is, in the past, it's been about delivering that plan, right? Or delivering that construction project. Well, today, it's not just about delivering the plan or project, it's about the process. There's a lot of value that the public, Odot, and others get out of the process. And so how do we extract value out of the process? Which is a good segue into alternative delivery programs. We realize that conventional design, bid, build, or low bid is not the optimal delivery method for extracting value. Truly, if we want to look at equity and workforce, I would say 98% of the projects that Odot delivers has been that low bid, just purely based on price. I've been working the last 3 years with my team to get these programs off the ground. We focused on the CMGC procurement and contracting for Rose Quarter, and now that's underway. And we recently reached a major milestone with getting our design build program up and running. And there's a $130 million project in Region 4, the Bend area, where we have a design build underway now. And these procurement and delivery mechanisms are truly the way to go when it comes to advancing equity into our projects.
And real quickly, David, we have a question from Art. Art?
Yes.
Yes, I have a, thank you, David. That's really nice layout here. I have a question. I know I kind of laid out an idea in the last breakout session that we had in our last meeting, and I noticed a quick pay statement coming out, but here's kind of a vision with equity. As we know, firms typically DBEs or what have you, they tend to not have funds to be able to afford their activities through the entire job. So in the very beginning of the project is usually where most of the highest cost for the projects will be incurred. And you know, if you're building a system, are you going to be building a system centered around their SOVs and how they're managing SOVs, and then some sort of guarantee that they're at the level of completion, so that way we don't build too much trust in the money that comes in from those projects as they are being developed. Secondly, you're kind of looking at an educational system that you're basically helping the contractor develop their business skills. And I think that's really, really important at this level if you're going to be investing in the community to build strong equity systems that continue, you know, this circle that is needed. My other statement that I want to make as well is that, you know, JATC programs, you know, we have a lot of businesses that are union and there's others that are not. And then you'll have things in there where JATCs need to be funded. All too often, these open shops don't have the ability to go over and just write a $7,000 or $9,000 or $10,000 check. We need, if you're going to build something, let's give that money that they need. Once you realize they have a JATC program, they're not a JATC agent. Let's go ahead and figure that out, because you know, all of these areas where these stumbling areas is all in the beginning. And then we go back and we're looking at citations and creating all these punitive models, which are not healthy for businesses. It's actually the opposite. It tears down the business's ability. You break the morale. I'm pointing at this because I'm telling you it doesn't fucking work. So I'm just pointing it out. I'm a business owner. I own two businesses. I see the hangups. Bonds, if you've got minority-based businesses or early firms that are going to be mentored by some other major entity, let's do this and put away the bond statement. They don't need it. What they got is a mentor. Let's put it away, get rid of it, because you're hurting their ability to even try. Because I can tell you right now, a shop opens up their bonding abilities. No, not their first 2-3 years. It's more like 5 years later. They don't have the ability to do it. They don't have the funds. They got to put their house up. They got to go after all these things that doesn't work for them. So I'll go back. I kind of want to understand what the money, how that's going to work for quick pay. And I want to understand how the JATCs and whatnot, because these are going to be mandated on these projects. I want to know how there may be funds available to get access to apprentices on these job sites.
So to your question about quick pay, I'll get to that here in a minute. On the JTCs, we're finding that most of the contractors that participate in the incentive disincentive provision for contracts are using JTCs. I just learned something new today, that Federal Highways actually funds a lot of the JTCs, but there's a gap in terms of the limit in how much can be funded, and we're exploring how to maybe raise that cap. So there are a lot of complexities as it relates to ODOT projects, bonding, payment, insurance, cash flow. And we're trying to take a look at where we focus our efforts on to get and prioritize our efforts to remove these barriers. And it varies from contractor to contractor. I was just in a meeting today on our emerging small business program where the legislature increased the ESB threshold from $100,000 to $250,000, and having conversations about how do we grow firms, how do we get more firms certified into this program so they can graduate. We have a mentor protege program, and I know we have a lot of work to do there to improve that program to get smaller firms ready for ODOT work. And then I'll speak to the small prime contractor development program here in a moment too. So you bring up some great points, and I would appreciate possibly having a follow-up conversation with you on what you've raised.
Mhm. Thank you.
So on the we formed the Urban Mobility Office, and this Urban Mobility Office was to take on these mega projects and heavily leveraging consultants. So using and having resources available. And there are going to be a lot of new and innovative approaches that are going to be piloted and tried out. So, CMGC is basically new for ODOT. Design build is new for ODOT. And my goal is to integrate these emerging practices into the broader portfolio of the ODOT projects that we have across the state. And we recently received approval for this local hiring preference on I-205. So we're going to watch that, learn from that, hear from the contractors and hear from the partners to see what worked well and what didn't, and then see how we can apply that into other projects where it makes sense. Partnerships with trade associations and industry. I believe that relationships are absolutely critical to ODOT's success to ensure all voices are heard from our partners and stakeholders. Understanding the opportunities, the barriers, the challenges that we all face can help inform how we collaborate, partner, and support one another. We can't do it alone. It's going to take ODOT, it's going to take our partners, it's going to take our communities to work together. And it's great to see this COAC and the diversity of this committee. We have bi-monthly meetings with various industry partners and minority trade associations such as PBDG, NAMAC, Latino Built, and we participate in other networking events such as OWAMI and Capital Connections. And part of the critical piece of the relationships is with an agency of over 4,500 employees. As a small business, where do you start? It's difficult to navigate, and having people that they can come to know where to go and understand what the challenges are is a huge first step. And we are taking steps to formalize partnerships with some kind of financial participation and sponsorship with our trade partners. So I'm hoping that we'll see something in the first quarter of next year. So some efforts that are in flight, they're being developed. As mentioned earlier, we have a lot of meetings with industry and with minority contractors and others, and we hear about timely payment, that we have minority subcontractors that have cash flow issues and they can't wait 6 months. And one of the issues with the ODOT process today is we don't pay out bid items until that bid item work is complete. And a prime may have a portion of a bid item subbed out, but if that work isn't complete, they don't get paid. And so what we are doing right now is looking at specific bid items that are likely subcontracted out to smaller firms and minority contractors. And even though the work is not completed, the full work is not completed, if that bid item work is complete, we'll go ahead and make advance payment. So we are evaluating that right now and trying to get that out the door here fairly soon. And then the other realm is to provide more contracting opportunities for certified firms. So I recently met with Les Spittler. I think he was a former chief procurement officer for the city of Portland. Now he's with TriMet. I also met with Molly Washington to get some insights to the city's program. I have a meeting next week with DOJ and Region 1 and our procurement staff to see how we can develop a small prime contractor program to build capacity and give certified firms an opportunity to be a prime. And the value to the state and to ODOT is the more prime contractors we have, the more competition we have. So there is benefit to the state. And this would require exemptions. The state of Florida has a really good model, and we're trying to mirror that model where they actually got federal highways buy-in. And if we can get federal funds to participate, this will really open the doors for more opportunities. So looking at how we can get that off the ground.
And real quickly, David, James Polsey has a question or a comment. James?
Hey, hey, David, how you doing, man? Glad to see you.
Hi, James.
Yeah, good. Hey, I just want to mention, I'm glad you got on the prime contractor development piece, because at some point, we need to acknowledge that several decades of discrimination and racism has had an impact. I mean, there's consequences for racism and discrimination and so on at ODOT, which really manifests itself in the lack of capacity, the lack of experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at the disparity studies we're talking about, but for the availability in the workforce and in the contracting industry. That's why I'm always excited about having an economist on board who can really justify the reason why you all need to put more emphasis on upfront work, the mentoring, et cetera, et cetera. So I think they got the right man on the job, but I just want you to really spend some time articulating that gap between what it takes to get where the average white contractor is, both at the subcontractor level and at the prime contractor level. So we know that gap and we can work toward that goal and implement programs that would close that gap. This is what I'm not seeing in you all's approach. And you and I have talked many times, David, so you're the right man to do this. I just need to see some, I need to see some confirmation, affirmation of what we've talked about over the years. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. And my hope is that as we launch, and this is conceptual right now, but as we launch this small prime contractor development program, that there will be lessons learned and understandings of what these smaller contractors are facing, the gaps, barriers, and so that we can tackle those and really open the doors to get more contractors to participate and have confidence, and build that trust. And I the word trust was called out earlier in the lack of trust, and that's going to take time. But it's not just time, but it's going to take action, and to demonstrate action that we will follow through on what we say we're going to do.
Yeah, David, what I want to just say to you is it can't be a passive system that we're talking about. You have to be an advocate to really go all the way up the chain to Federal Highways or whoever else to talk about how do we get this done. And you know as well as I do, when you got brick and mortar, you can waiver damn near anything if there's a cost benefit factor to it, and a social benefit should have the same sort of impact. So you can't accept no to try to get where we're trying to go. Thanks.
Agreed. And when we're talking about benefit, historically it's just been dollars and cents, and it's not dollars and cents anymore. It's about the community impacts, the equity piece. And so I'm trying to demonstrate that when the law says benefit, I'm saying, well, the benefit isn't just dollars, it's the benefit of building firms that's helping the economy, that's creating more competition. And the longer term benefit is if I get more contractors, that there's going to be a greater impact, greater benefit to the economy, greater benefit to Odot. So I'm working with DOJ to elaborate on benefit, and I think they're starting to see it. So more to come on this piece.
Good.
Next slide. So as we look at equity, it's an emerging arena as relates to data. And so we have this GIS map that uses 5 data groups today: age, ability, income, language, and race, ethnicity. That's really going to assist us in applying a social equity lens to our work. And we're just beginning to develop the data, collect the data, analyze the data, and use this data for equity. And we're now able to overlay other layers like projects or climate to these maps to see how we can increase the probability of equitable outcomes, regardless of the demographics or identity. And going back to the 5 questions that Maria raised earlier, we've included that in our scoping documents. So every project is going to have a baseline, and we're going to monitor those questions throughout the project delivery process all the way through construction. And then we're also going to apply this equity index value that will help inform project teams of the opportunities that exist, whether they be community impacts, community engagement, contracting opportunities. And I would consider this to be an emerging practice. I don't know that other DOTs necessarily have this in place yet, but this can also help inform program criteria, funding levels, project identification, prioritization, selection, and enhancement. So if I have 2 comparable projects and they're looking at paving, and one's in a high equity area, that could be a factor that says we're going to make that a priority project over this other paving project that will just pave when more funding becomes available. And so there is a paradigm shift that needs to take place, and the process of developing projects is just as important as building the projects. And I'm hopeful that as we continue to have dialogue internally and externally, that we can get there. And I would look to the COAC to be a committee that holds ODOT accountable, not just for the Rose Quarter project, but for all the other conversations that we've had relating to equity. And I will stop there and see if there are any more questions.
Questions, comments from COAC? David, was that the conclusion of your PowerPoint?
Yeah, that was a conclusion.
Okay. All right. If we could get the
I have a question in the chat, Jonelle.
okay, why don't you go ahead
we-
and communicate it so that everyone because not everyone could read in terms
Sure.
of the audience.
So, David, I think you and the team working on this are exceptional. And so please know that we stand to see this program do well. I am concerned with the number of programs that are being stood up at the same time, or stood up and expanded at the same time. You have the mentor protege, prime contractor development, and you're revamping the ESB. Is there staff capacity to ensure that these programs are run well? And how do we ensure that work opportunities are available for the participants of these programs and that opportunities go to BIPOC firms? The complexities of running the programs are what they are. And I think at the end of the day, we all want to see the same thing, that firms are making money while learning with you.
Yeah, I said earlier that it's people and resources that are things that make things happen, right? And I think we're seeing challenges with that. The mentor protege program, what we do today is we throw the money over the fence to the Port of Portland and have them manage it. And a recent audit reviewed the program, and there's a question whether ODOT's truly getting value out of that program by having the port deliver. The difficulty is we don't have the staff resources or bandwidth to deliver a program like that. The ESB program has been around for a while, and so what we did with the legislature is change the law to increase the program at $100,000 or less. We just found that we weren't providing meaningful contracting opportunities, so bumping that up to $250. We have a dedicated program manager there, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. The prime contractor development program is one where we're going to have conversations about who's going to drive that bus, but it's conceptual right now. There may have to be a statutory change. And so we have some draft statute change that will truly open the doors for us to say, we're going to, as part of the small prime contractor program, maybe set aside, $15 million or $10 million devoted to this program to building capacity for smaller primes. And so more to come on that. And ultimately, it takes people to ensure programs get developed and are operational. So, and then looking at how these programs can work together, right? Mentor protege. I would really love to see the program focused on ODOT horizontal construction projects, not just any projects. And so I think we're revisiting that to see how maybe we can make that happen.
Amber and James.
Yeah, just to Kenichi's question, which is like a brilliant question. So when we did the barriers analysis, we did a comparative analysis between ODOT, the FTE for implementing these types of programs, and we compared them to other comparable states. We looked at Arizona, Washington State, California, et cetera. And by far, ODOT lacks the necessary resources considerably to implement the programs that they have, and that is one of the barriers that is impeding their ability to do these kinds of innovations. And that's, for example, one of the reasons why they have a mentor protege program, but they have someone else manage it, and therefore our finding was the same finding as the audit's finding, because the mentor protege program isn't focused on scopes that are related to ODOT work. And so basically it's a mentor protege program for other types of work that don't benefit ODOT at all. But anyway, this group can help support the augmentation of resources And some of these other solutions, I think, would be very helpful to ODOT because they do have the support in terms of the leadership at the top, but they need the resources and the right strategies in order to be able to implement those. So
James?
So, David, way back when you had a different role, you were hesitant to get into the face of civil rights on how they ran their programs, whether it be a certification or anything else. That I don't know if you have expanded responsibility to hold various parts of the group accountable. But the ESB program has always been window dressing. On the streets, we call it everybody except the brothers. ESB, everybody except the brothers. That's what ESB means. That program has been mainly for white people, basically. We all know that that's been around for a long, long time. And we all know that the ports program, the Stemple program, as it were, when it was, established way back when, it had no real projects associated with it. And it was used as window dressing to make the organization look as if they were achieving something. But we never found anybody really who got anything out of that if it wasn't connected to a project. And so you guys giving these programs over to the port, you give that supportive services program over to the Department of Labor. You guys can't wash your hands of these programs if, in fact, you're really going to have a program that's going to deal with the equity that deals with ODOT. Because when you give those programs over to other agencies, they just become middlemen. We don't get the value that we ought to be getting out of these programs. You guys need to bring that stuff back home and make them accountable to how these actual programs perform.
Thank you for that, James. It's bodies and people, and I'd say over the years with the Office of Civil Rights, they've been so short-staffed that the only role that they've really had is oversight and meeting the minimum requirements because they just don't have the bodies. And now with having this Office of Social Equity, we are starting to see some changes. There's some more proactiveness as it relates to equity across the agency. Again, people, process, policies, programs, and projects. We're starting to see that, and I'm leaning in. I'm a change agent for the agency, you know me, and I'm pushing and I'm fighting the fight.
Maria?
Sorry, I was on mute. I actually concur 100% with David on this. We need to move away from just simply looking at at this work as kind of a compliance perspective and really start looking at this from a proactive perspective of how we can push our programs farther and having a lot more of that self-reflection. So that is what our entire office, including the Office of Social Equity, is working on, and including the Office of Civil Rights is working on. And it's a slog, and we're trying to chip at it away bit by bit. The other thing I wanted to mention was that if the group is interested, we would be happy to present the results of the recommendations of our work on this BIPOC contract expansion. So we could present that to this group.
Yes,
And
that would be
then
great. Consider you're having an invitation.
okay, great. And then after that, we will have a plan to hold ourselves accountable. Like, who is responsible? When is this happening? How are these shifts, these changes taking place within the agency? That's what we're all working towards in the spring here.
Right.
So just on that accountability piece, I just want to add one more thing. If you look at a position description of an ODOT employee today, there's probably not much in there as relates to equity. And I think a good starting point would be to have language in every person's PD that addresses equity and what their responsibility is. So then there is that expectation and they can be measured against something versus it's not in my PD. So, I'll do it, but I think that should be an expectation. And we, I've had conversations and I think it's more follow-up with HR on that, but I think that's a good starting point as it relates to a workforce and starting internally.
And one thing I'll just add, I'll put this in the chat box for those who may not be aware, in the Federal Register, United States Department of Transportation, they have for public comment their strategic plan, and one of the core areas is equity. So as we begin to have a dialogue relative to equity on projects here in Oregon, it's important to also note that there's a national dialogue. And so more and more of this work is going to be important. Thank you for that robust conversation. We need to move on now to public comment. But before we do that, I would like to ask both Bill as well as Jeff to just give a teaser of what COAC can expect at our next month's meeting for what we did not get a chance to cover today. So Bill and Jeff, if you could kind of just give a foreshadow of what we'll be discussing next month.
Guy, I wish I could have been a COAC member tonight. That was really great conversation. I can't say that anyone on our team is surprised that you could take a whole meeting to cover that information. We'll find I think most folks understand that we were halfway through the community matrix, and we have 5 more categories of comments that we were going to triage with the COAC tonight and point to the diversity plan on how we essentially had incorporated their comments. So yeah, you had it. So we'll probably, we're on part 2, next slide. Yep. So this is easy to push ahead. I don't see it impacting the overall schedule in any way. And we have 4 topics lined out for the first 4 months of next year. So anyways, I'll just leave it at that. I don't think this hurts us at all. In fact, I think that conversation was well worth the price of admission. Thanks. Jeff?
I don't have any other comments other than, David, it's good to see you. We've been in the trenches a long time, and it's good to see the work. And, you know, we've been talking about this stuff and see the movement that you're doing. I just want you to know, from me to you, how much I just appreciate you. And so I just wanted to say that. Okay. See everybody next month.
Right. With that, we are going to now go to public comment. Do we have any public commenters in the queue?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Okay, if you could just remind the public of what the rules are associated with public comment, and I will be relying on you to manage the clock.
Absolutely. So thank you all for joining tonight. We had a very good conversation. We couldn't get through the agenda, but now we're going to go into public comment. If you would like to make a verbal public comment, you may call in by dialing number 971-247-1195, entering meeting ID number 880-3045-7705, passcode 518722. The instructions also to submit a written comment or to call in by voicemail is also on the project website and also on our YouTube channel. So I'm just going through this just to say for the time's sake, but we do have a public commenter that is here. I'm going to go ahead and admit
Great.
them, and then I'm going to go ahead and share the timer real quickly. Okay. Let me pause it. Can y'all see the timer?
We cannot.
Okay.
No.
Nope. Okay. Let me try it again. Hold on 1 second. Now?
No, and I think for the sake of time, I'll just.
Let's not worry about it. I'll just
yeah.
time it then, and I won't
Okay.
put up the timer. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. Good enough for me. Okay.
And if you could remind folks how many minutes they have.
We have 1 minute. I think she's
Okay.
gone.
Oh,
Well, she's.
No, I'm here.
okay.
You're here?
I'm
Oh, she
here.
submitted. Oh, okay. Someone else submitted. Okay.
Okay.
1 minute. I was told 2 minutes. I'm the only one.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tell me
Okay.
when you're ready. Go ahead.
Ready. I'm Diana Meisenhelter, a resident of Inner Northeast for over 32 years and volunteer as a member of the NAACP Environmental Justice Group and XRPDX. And dire predictions issued this fall by the world's best climate scientists indicate that if we don't cut emissions in half within the next decade, millions of people and species will succumb to climate chaos. We're on a path to 2.7 degrees right now, and even at 1.1 degrees, we're already locally witnessing dangerous health effects of climate chaos, including drought, wildfires, and the heat dome that killed over 100 folks last summer. Frontline communities suffer the most in these situations, as we've already witnessed. According to the most recent EPA National Air Toxicity Assessment, I-5 and 205 are among the most dangerously polluting highways in the U.S., and the recent Cascadia Action Environmental Justice Report documents the severe health inequity impacts from these highways and an overconcentration of polluting industries in Northeast Portland. Each additional mile of highway will increase emissions by more than 100 to 186,000 tons over the time frame we need to get to zero emissions. So we need to be decreasing, not increasing vehicle miles traveled, and using congestion pricing, as several studies show that expanding freeways adds to induced demand and doesn't reduce congestion. Odot proposes the lowest free bronze level of the Green Roads program and should be pushed on when more stringent levels are not being considered, as well as the continued need for a full environmental and health impact analysis to inform project metrics. Without expanding, Odot could take reparative steps of their harm reduction, like capping the freeway, mitigating the pollution affecting Harriet Tubman and the surrounding neighborhood, expanding jobs and economic benefits for Black businesses, and easing some of the difficulties posed by the past dividing of our community. Odot should seek funds for instituting congestion pricing, efficient electrified free or low-cost mass transit options, and mitigating for earthquake and flood safety before even considering freeway expansion. I just listened to this group today, and I'm really excited about the jobs work and thoughtfulness that you're doing on that score. So keep up the good work.
Great, thank you for your comment. Do we have any others signed up for public comment?
Nope, I don't see anyone in the waiting room. I think that is it for this evening.
Okay, great. Well,
I think
Amber,
Amber just put her hand up. Okay.
Yeah, I saw it. Go ahead, Amber.
Just really quick for everyone. I know that we're, so for the next COAC meeting in January, Jeff and Bill and the JV are going to talk about the last part of the community matrix. We were going to have the diversity plan celebration, so that we'll move that back to the meeting after this one. And so so we'll be connecting with you to make sure that as many of you folks can participate in that. It'll be like an online celebration, and there will be games, and we will have prizes, and there will be some videos with some snappy, funny types of approaches. So we'll see. We'll see if you all think I'm funny. Maybe I'm not funny. Thanks, Janelle.
Great, thank you, Amber. Monica, any closing comments?
I'd just like to say thank you for the great discussion tonight. I think it was great to hear from everybody and hear what Odot's doing, and I just really appreciate the feedback that this group continues to give us as an agency.
Great. With that, I want to thank you all for, again, a wonderful year of active participation. Your energy and efforts are really improving not only Odot as an institution, but the way in which these projects show up in our community. I hope everyone have a wonderful holiday season and look forward to seeing you in the new year. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Good night.